Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Mm. I should have, but I'll tell you what. When you have to record and you have to turn your fan off, boy, boy, that's a rough one. I am suffering right now. But for sound reasons, I shouldn't have my fan on. So it right. All right. There you go. No, no. Actually, it's usually my father that does that, and he hasn't been well enough the past few years to get fireworks and set them off. But he used to love going to Pennsylvania and buying like all these fireworks, and then we'd invite people over and have hot dogs, and we'd all sit in the front yard and watch these things go off. And of course, I'm sure many neighbors hated us for doing that, and frankly, I don't miss it. Uh, I'm I'm with the vets and I'm with the pets, and I don't care so much about all the noise and fireworks because I think it upsets a lot of people, a lot of vets, and I think it upsets a lot of pets. And I think we could do without it. Right. Now, before you get going, we've got a report from the chat room that apparently your voice is not being heard.
Okay. We'll see if that does it. But anyways, so yeah, it was recently the 4th of July. My neighbors shot off a fair amount of things, but fortunately our older kiddos aren't as easily rustled about those things, thankfully. I recall not that long ago when one of them would cower and hide under the bed. So, all right. Well, aside from that, our senior showgirl is anxious to get going here because, she's got an early night, and we just want to let the folks know about what we're going to talk about tonight. So, Gertie, could you get down to the stage for me?
Oh, yeah. I've been waiting for you to stop flapping your gums. All right, I'm going down.
Oh, there she goes, and here we go.
Bill is a survivor. His childhood experience with a plane crash led him to a career in air flight safety. One day, while coasting through his usual routine of briefings and meetings, he encounters a face from his past. A beautiful woman, masquerading as a flight attendant, seemed strangely familiar. The days ahead are spent reliving his memories and trying to solve a mystery. Had he met her before? Or was it kismet? Grab a flashlight and a pair of gloves. We're searching wreckage. It's time for Millennium with Chris Christopherson and Cheryl Ladd. Take it away, fellas.
What do you get when you take a dash to the silver screen? A pinch of golden oldies and a smidgen of screaming. It's time for Matinee Minutia with your hosts DJ and Toppy.
Ooh, alrighty. So we're talking about a sci-fi thriller here tonight, folks. I tried to put myself in the mood for this film, Toppy, and I typed the word dystopian into my music service, and all of the music that I ended up listening to, it seemed like those artists were afraid of turning their computers on after the holidays at the Millennium.
Okay.
So if you're not sure what that word dystopian means, is that it's a bleak future. Things don't turn out so right. So this film took place in 1989, and that was more than a couple of decades ago. Toppy, what do we normally do?
Well, why don't you talk about 1989 around the U.S. and our history?
Okay. U.S. history in 1989. Los Angeles City Council bans the sale or possession of semi-automatic weapons. I wonder if that stood. Unemployment drops to 5%, and it's the lowest since 1973. In 89, sunspot activity caused an outage of a Quebec-based hydroelectric dam. No, I didn't swear. It's, one of those things that traps water. And it's leaving 6 million people without power for 9 hours back in 89. And the first time a privately owned rocket had orbited a payload was in 89. It launched a TV satellite. Congress passed legislation to raise the minimum wage from, get this, folks, $3.35 to $4.25 an hour. Overtime up until 1991, and we'll leave it up to our economists to tell us if that's a sliding scale or not. So, all right, Toppy. In 1989, there's a few people that came into the world who are contributing to the Walk of Fame. Who came into the world in 1989?
Well, you've got your Cord or Chord, Please, parents, don't name your kid Chord.
Oh, it's
Hopefully it's pronounced Cord.
it is.
Okay, thank you. Cord Overstreet. He's an actor from the TV show Glee. Also Tyler Oakley. He's a musician you can see on YouTube. And also Jason Derulo. He's a urban musician and rhythm and blues.
Oh, Gertie knows who that is very much. I heard her getting down before the show to some of his tunes.
Oh, I bet. She's a fan. She's a fan. Tell us about Millennium in the theaters. What was it competing with?
Alrighty, so Millennium was a film. It was released to theaters. It was on the silver screen, as we say. And it was released in the summer of '89. It was in August. And the top of the box office that year includes the number one film is Batman with Michael Keaton. It brought in $251 million. And then a film with Harrison Ford and Sean Connery. No, you're not having a flashback. There was one that came out this year with Harrison Ford. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Well, spoiler alert, it wasn't the last. And number 3 that year was Lethal Weapon 2 with Mr. Tinfoil Hat, Mr. Mel Gibson. And Danny Glover brought in $197 million, I believe. So, Millennium, well, it wasn't, at the bottom. It wasn't at the top. Somewhere in the middle. It was number 115. Brought in $5.7 million. So, it at least paid for Cheryl Ladd's Aquanet. And one better than Millennium that year was a film with Glenn Close and James Woods called Immediate Family. It brought in $5.9 million. And it was an adoption story with a reluctant birth mother. And it was actually an early film for, I believe, Mary Louise Parker that was later in the Fried Green Tomatoes movies. Let's see now. Also that year, one less than Millennium, was a film that brought in $5.5 million. It was called Dream a Little Dream. It had Corey Haim and Corey Feldman, so the Coreys. And one of my favorite actors, Jason Robards. Now, I have not seen this film. It's, some say it was a dud, but I'm curious to watch it just simply because I have an affinity for Jason Robards, as I said. But this was about an accident that puts the consciousness of an elderly dream researcher into the body of a bratty teenager. The problem? The kid prefers dream world limbo to real life. So it was a body swapping story, which was quite popular in that time frame, done several times.
All right. Well, let's talk about the director. And that's Michael Anderson. He's been around for a long time, people. Born in 1920. He passed away in 2018. He was English. He was a film director best known for directing the World War II film The Dam Busters in '55, the epic and one of my favorites, Around the World in 80 Days in '56, and in much later in '76 he directed the dystopian sci-fi film Logan's Run. Anderson was born in London to a theatrical family. Both of his parents were actors, and he began working in the industry as an actor during the 1930s. But by 1938, he had graduated to working behind the camera as an assistant director, and that's where his interest would stay for the remainder of his life. And in the World War II, he served in the British Army's Royal Signal Corps, where he met actor Peter Ustinov, of all people. And after the war, Anderson joined Peter Ustinov in several projects that kind of began his career. So a stroke of luck that he would befriend an actor who would use him in his movies as a production runner first, and then an assistant director. And a couple of the movies Ustinov did with Anderson was School for Secrets in 46 and Vice Versa in 47. And Anderson and Ustinov then wrote and directed a feature together that was called Private Angelo in 49.
Toppy, before we continue, we'll pick up in a sec here. If you could just check your settings in Skype. This did happen only once before because we often have multiple microphones on our computer setups. I just want to double check and have you make sure that it's the one that you usually use.
Okay.
Because you're sounding a little distant, which could be your computer's microphone picking you up rather than your other one.
Okay, got it. Give me a moment and I will check.
We'll do what we call vamping. So this is where we just sort of pretend like nothing is going on. And, if I was, resourceful, I might cue up a commercial that was from this era. But I didn't do my homework in that part. So, blame me, send me to the principal's office. But, by the way, if you are so inclined to check us out on YouTube tonight, I'm joining you from a hotel lobby. And why is that? Well, just like tonight's film, I was told that if I came here, I would meet a beautiful woman from the future. But alas, when I checked into the hotel room, there was just an ashtray with a lit cigarette. So I guess I just missed her.
All right. Did that improve anything, what I just did? Did it sound any different?
I don't think it has, but are there many other settings to check?
Yeah, there's some other things I can tinker around here with.
Okay. We're fine on time because, we were a few minutes late getting started and,
What about now? Anything different now? Testing.
It's a little clearer, but it's not necessarily closer.
Okay.
But remember where you are, so in case you need to go back to it.
Okay.
I know from my own setup, it's usually the name of the, my favorite microphone that comes up on that list.
All right, did that change?
Oh, yes. We're cooking with gas now.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So there was something I could do about it. Tommy, I lied.
Well, we talked about Doctor Who not that long ago, and one of the rules about traveling with the Doctor that fans will tell you is the number one rule is the Doctor lies.
Okay. So testing, I'm okay now.
You are.
I'm better.
Yeah, did you want to start off with the director?
Okay.
Or is that too far back?
Yeah, let's start off with the director. I'll try to abbreviate.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to talk about the director, and his name is Michael Anderson. He was born in 1920. English film director, best known for directing the World War II film The Dam Busters in 1955, that wonderful movie Around the World in 80 Days in 1956, and the dystopian sci-fi film Logan's Run in 1976. The guy's been around and telling stories for a long time, and he knows how to tell a story. He was in World War II, but once he and when he was in the British Army Royal Signal Corps, he met Peter Ustinov, of all people. And after the war, Peter Ustinov gave Michael Anderson some of his first big jobs, and first as a production runner, and then later as an assistant director, and then later as a full director. So he was very lucky to meet up with Peter Ustinov. And a couple of the projects they worked on was School for Secrets in 1946, Vice Versa in 1947, and then together Anderson and Ustinov wrote and directed
Private Angelo in 49. They did that together. In 1950, Anderson made his solo directorial debut with a B movie called Waterfront in 1950. Not On the Waterfront with Marlon Brando. It was a different movie, simply called Waterfront. It starred Robert Newton and Richard Burton. And then he went on to direct many more small B movies. It's how he trained, how he got to be as skilled as he was. Later on, he wound up making 5 films, the third of which was his big breakthrough. It was a war film called The Dam Busters, starring Richard Todd, which was the most popular movie at the British box office in 1955. After that came Around the World in 80 Days, another huge, huge hit. By the way, Around the World in 80 Days got Anderson nominated for an Academy Award for director. He didn't win it, but the film did win Best Picture. However, Anderson did win the Golden Globe for his direction. So, what do people do when they find success? Well, they go to Hollywood. And when he did, he got there and he directed The Wreck of the Mary Deer in 59. That was Gary Cooper and Charlton Heston. And through the 60s, Anderson went on making movies. You might know some of them. All the Fine Young Cannibals, 1960. The Naked Edge. The Flight from Ashia, which was an adventure tale. And Wild and Wonderful, a comedy with Tony Curtis. In the 70s, Anderson is known for films such as The Devil's Imposter, Doc Savage, The Man of Bronze. You know who was Doc Savage? Ron Eli, who was Tarzan for a couple, 3 seasons on TV. Ron Eli was a handsome man to look at. That's all I got to say. He also did Conduct Unbecoming. And in 76, well, probably the movie he's most well known for, it was the super expensive box office success, Logan's Run, in 76. But he followed that up. He followed that movie up in 1977 with a movie I love. Oh my God, it's such a guilty pleasure. It's called Orca. Oh my God, it's a Jaws ripoff. And I love it. Orca in 1977. And he did Dominique in 78. After that, he moved to Canada and directed mostly Canadian made-for-TV series, which included The Martian Chronicles in 1980, Sea Wolf in 93, Captains Courageous in 96, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in 97. In 2012, Michael Anderson received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Directors Guild of Canada, and that's Michael Anderson.
Oh, and I do believe he lived to the ripe age of 98, Toppy.
Yes, indeed. And let me just make sure, when did he die? He died in 2018.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, so in a moment, we're going to step over here to the snack bar because we're getting close to the middle of the hour. But I'm going to go ahead and start off talking about the leading man of tonight's film. He's Mr. Chris Christopherson, and he's no stranger to stealing the scene because, a few years before he was the gentleman on the arm of Barbra Streisand in A Star Is Born, her version. Now, Mr. Christopherson played the character of Bill Smith in Millennium. He was the survivor of a crash, and this is how he came to know, so to speak, the lady in this film. Christopherson was born in South Texas. He was on the border town of Brownsville. His father was a U.S. Air Force general, so, the bar was set pretty high by Dad. And as a result, his family had a very transient life. By the mid-50s, his family had moved to San Mateo, which is a town south of San Francisco. An aspiring writer, Christopherson attended Pomona College. There he graduated with a bachelor's in literature. The summer before enrolling at college, he took a job in the South Pacific as a dredging contractor at Wake Island. Talk about some manual labor. Now, before trying his hand as a songwriter, that was the next chapter of his life, Christopherson was in the military. He joined the Army because, like most military kids, they go into the branch that their folks weren't in. And he joined the Army. So where he would eventually achieve the rank of captain and became a skilled helicopter pilot. After ending his tour of duty in Germany, he was offered a position teaching English literature at West Point. But he turned it down. He's getting a track record there for doing things that he's not expected to. And it was in favor of pursuing music. And he moved to Nashville at that point in his life. There he would meet Johnny Cash while working at a cleaning job at a recording studio. Hey, Toppy, have you tried to sell some of your songs?
Yeah, every once in a while I get a chance, but not too much attention.
I think that David Duchovny owes you some money for the Red Shoe Diaries.
Right.
After trying to interest Cash in some of his music, within a few years, Christopherson would land a helicopter in his yard with a beer in his hand. And it would be a decade before Christopherson would give up alcohol, but not before he would date Janis Joplin, of all people. Imagine having that on your, little black book. Christopherson began acting in the early 70s because, he was trying his hand at everything. Now, Millennium was his 19th film. He was no stranger to appearing in front of the camera. And his film just before this, get this, he was in Big Top Pee-wee. He was one of the animal trainers. He was a wrangler. And in the 5 years before, Christopherson would appear in 3 films, including Flashpoint in '84 with Treat Williams, who we, of course, just recently lost to a motorcycle accident. And he was also in '84 Songwriter with Willie Nelson and Rip Torn. Toppy, I want to see this movie now. I never knew it existed before. And it also has Melinda Dillon, Toppy. That's the mom from the first Christmas Story movie.
Okay.
In '85, he was in a film with Keith Carradine and Genevieve. Yes, Genevieve. I learned that from Star Trek, how to pronounce her name. Genevieve Bujold, who was also the first Captain Janeway, but that never flew. And our favorite drag queen on film, Divine. We did Lust in the Dust last year. So this was Trouble in Mind in '85. Now, in the 5 years after Millennium, Christopherson would appear in 6 films, including in '89 with Jo Beth Williams, Sam Waterston, and Brian Keith, from that Family Affairs show. He was in a film called Welcome Home. And in 1990, he was in a film with Dean Stockwell. Everybody's favorite hologram from... what was that show where the guy traveled?
Jumping places. Skipping around.
Scott Bakula was in it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Dean Stockwell in 1990 was in a movie with Chris Christopherson. And then in 92, Christopherson was in a film with Drew Barrymore, Martin Landau, and O.J. Simpson, of all people. No Place to Hide. Now, I'm not sure if this took place around the time of that little court trial. But anyways... Christopherson has in more recent years retired from acting, which was announced in 2021. And in the last 5 years of his film career, Christopherson appeared in 11 films, which included a series of Western-themed productions, with one being called Hickok, about Wild Bill, and it was with Luke Hemsworth, yes, one of the pretty boys, the Hemsworth brothers. Also was in a film called Lawless Range with Beau Bridges, and his last film appearance, it's apropos because it was directed by Ethan Hawke, the 90s star that was in all those grunge films, including Reality Bites. Well, Ethan Hawke directed Chris Christopherson's last movie called Blaze in 2018, and it was a reimagining of the life and times of Blaze Foley, the unsung songwriting legend of the Texas outlaw music movement. And upon retiring, he had 120 acting credits to his name. Now, with a name like Blaze Foley, though, it sounds like a made-up name, like when Garth Brooks decided to be a pop artist. Anyways, all right. We are out here at the snack bar where Gertie is serving up some treats. Hey, now, that's a dirty ashtray. Don't try to give me a paper umbrella in that.
Ew. That's gross. That is really gross.
It was quite a while ago now that Millennium came out. And since it wasn't a box office smash, there really weren't any interviews that I could find from the cast. So this is an interview with the director, the famed Michael Anderson, that Toppy spoke about. And he's talking about some of his favorite directorial jobs, including Logan's Run. Have a listen.
Meanwhile, I was working on what was to be one of the most complex technical pictures, and the biggest picture MGM had made for many, many years. Particularly the thing called Carousel. Carousel was a device where the story was that you lived until the age of 30. At the age of 30, you surrendered, you went to Carousel, and in a ceremony, you were killed, you died. But if you could reach, you were transported up towards the ceiling of Carousel, where if you reached the top, the ring at the top, and touched it, you would be renewed. Your life would be spared, you would be renewed. And so the goal was, hope springs eternal was the theme. In other words, even when you're sentenced to death, if you can reach that ring, then you can survive. In fact, in the story, you realize later that there was no eternal life, there was no ring, and no one had ever touched it. And so it was merely a way of inducing the people to accept death, but accept the possibility that there was life to come in a society that had everything. It was the land of pleasure, the land of joy. The catch was that you died at 30. And so to build Carousel, they decided to open the tank at MGM where I had shot the wreck of the Mary Dear and put huge engines in that would turn the turntable, that would bring people around, and rotate the top at the same time and put strings in or wires in that would pull the people up. And the idea was that 20 or 30 people at a time would ride around like a merry-go-round on wires which had to be invisible because it should look like gravitation. The wires would be invisible and turn at the same time, all on hydraulics. It was an engineering feat of some magnitude. In fact, at one time they thought that the floor at MGM, even the floor beneath the tank, would collapse, would be too heavy, wouldn't be heavy enough to support it. And this and other technical things were going on: costume designs, makeup, hair, the building of other sets, and the choosing of locations. And the film started shooting, and again, it was incredible to be back in the saddle at MGM on the old Stage 30. In fact, at one point, Stage 30 was opened and joined with Stage 29 because Stage 30 wasn't big enough for the Ice Palace set which they built. So it took up two sets. And so it was on a scale and a magnitude that really was very, very lavish. And it felt incredible to have, again, all this great technical advice and these marvelous technicians at my disposal, and that was the way I made the film.
Okay. So, rewinding a little bit, a little post-production magic here. I'm going to pretend we already did this, but we're going to listen to the trailer for this film. Are you ready, Toppy?
Awesome. Play that trailer.
All right. This is what you would have seen if you were the movie-going sort in the late 80s. And remember, this was a summer movie, so it might have been date night.
TUA-35 Heavy, could you give me your location?
Minneapolis, we are currently heading 0.
TUA-35, turn to heading.
My God. Jesus, down. Go down. For Flight 35.
We are going down.
It was the end.
Do not be afraid.
Or was it?
Walk towards the light.
What unusual facts have you developed in your investigation?
This crash has been crazy from the start.
Is there anything odd? Going backwards?
I'm afraid I still don't know what you're driving at.
I'm simply looking for the inexplicable. I usually find it.
You're endangering a project that's bigger than you can imagine.
I know damn well we can't change the past.
Time travels. You don't want to be found.
Then you are from the future.
About 1,000 years. Sherman, send the gate.
Once in 1,000 years comes an adventure like this. We've been expecting you. Millennium.
Ooh, there were airplanes and there were explosions and time travel. And, we've talked a few times about the fact that our little journey here about film and television trivia started with a little talk about a film called Barbarella. And, of course, it's no secret that old Dad, he had the eyes for Jane Fonda. And if you weren't on the fence about Millennium, you certainly went to see it for Cheryl Ladd, because she was the star besides Mr. Christopherson. She had the big hair, and she'd come to us fresh from the decade before on Charlie's Angels. Toppy, tell us a bit about Cheryl Ladd, if you will.
Well, okay. It's hard to follow Chris Christopherson, what with his being in the Army and, meeting Johnny Cash and being a helicopter pilot and et cetera, dating Janis Joplin. Okay, it's hard to outdo that. And in fact, Cheryl Ladd doesn't outdo it at all. Okay, we're going to take a step back. So Cheryl Ladd, bless her little heart, born in 1951 in South Dakota, she wanted to sing. Yep, she wanted to sing, and so she began a career in music. And this is by the time she was by the time it was after high school, she traveled around with a band locally called The Music Shop, and she played in venues in the Midwest. But eventually she settled in where all young girls who are pretty settle, Hollywood, Los Angeles. And she was there to jumpstart her career in music. And she did land a gig as the voice of Melody on Hanna-Barbera's Josie and the Pussycats animated series. And she also sang on the 1970 album of the same name. But she soon began to land non-singing roles in commercials and episodic television, and these would be shows like The Rookies, The Partridge Family, Policewoman, The Muppet Show, Search. Well, Search was like a one-season deal. I don't know why. Anyways, also Happy Days. And in 1977, well, it's her big break, where she replaced Farrah Fawcett majors on Charlie's Angels and remained part of the cast for the next 4 seasons until the show's cancellation in June of 1981. And she took advantage of her newfound fame, which she did get from Charlie's Angels, to promote her music career. And she guest starred in a musical comedy variety series and specials wherever she could. Back then, they were still a thing. She performed at the national anthem at the Super Bowl in January 1980. I'm sorry, she performed the national anthem at the Super Bowl in 1980. And she released 3 albums. And by the way, she had a top 40 Billboard Hot 100 single and a gold record. So I don't know. So she eventually became a familiar face after Charlie's Angels on televisions because she made more than 30, count them, 30 made-for-television films. Yes, indeedy. For example, she also eventually had the lead role in the television series One West Waikiki in 94 to 96. Don't know a goddamn thing about that. She made lots of guest appearances on other TV shows like Charmed, Hope and Faith, CSI Miami. And then she did a little character called Jillian DeLine, and that was from a TV show called Las Vegas. And she played the wife of the lead character, portrayed by James Caan. And that ran for 29 episodes. So after that, guess what? Wouldn't believe it, but Alan Ladd had it. Alan Ladd. Did you hear what I just said?
Very different person.
Very different person. Cheryl Ladd headed on over to Broadway, believe it or not. And she took over the title role from Bernadette Peters in a revival of Irving Berlin's Annie Get Your Gun.
Oh.
And she stayed with the role for about a year. And then she went on to appear in TV productions all over the place. A Hallmark movie called Love's Everlasting Courage. And just, I don't know. And then it's NCIS episode and a television series called Chuck. And her film roles, not many, but here they are. She did in the movies Purple Hearts in 1984, Our Movie Tonight Millennium in 89. She did Poison Ivy in 92, Permanent Midnight in 98, and Unforgettable in 2017. Oh. There you go. That's Cheryl.
Oh my goodness! So, yeah, she practically invented the Lifetime channel before its time. I'm sure she's got some stories to tell.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, when you've got a cast like we have here in Millennium, where you've got 2 leading roles by 2 well-known people, it's hard to decide on who else should share the spotlight. Now, as the story goes, it would be easy to talk about the scientist that the lead character Bill Smith runs into when things, they all fall apart. But that would be too easy. And, we try to do the unexpected here. So I'm going to talk about Cheryl Ladd's character's boss from the future. This is a man that's called Sherman. And he looks a little bit like Beetlejuice. He's sun-bleached, and his hair has seen better days, and he's in a wheelchair. And Sherman was played by Robert Joy. Now, Robert Joy is a Canadian actor, and he was born in Montreal, Quebec. His father was a physician turned politician. He was elected to an office which is basically the equivalent to a state senate here in the U.S., Joy's big break was when he was cast opposite Madonna. Can you imagine one of your first film roles being cast with Madonna? How do you go from there? He was cast as her punk boyfriend in her breakout film in '85, Desperately Seeking Susan. Now, in '98, so within a decade, he appeared in a film called Fallen, where he fit into an all-star cast that included Denzel Washington, Donald Sutherland, and the star of HBO's Sopranos, James Gandolfini, and of course the dad from Roseanne, John Goodman.
A super creepy film, folks, if you haven't seen Fallen with Denzel Washington. Ooh. Ooh.
Now, in 2005, Robert Joy had a leading role as the simple-minded sharpshooter Charlie Ho in George Romero's zombie film Land of the Dead. So if you're a fan of horror films, you possibly know who Mr. Joy is. Now, in the fall of 2005, Joy joined the CBS, the Big Brother, the Eyeball network there, police procedural series CSI, which, has a million different spin-offs.
Of course, every goddamn actor. That's what. If you're an actor in the U.S. today and you don't have a credit with CSI or one of those procedurals, you ain't nobody. I don't know.
I mean, I hear that Gertie had a walk-on role as a dead lady on the sidewalk, and that one season, but they didn't pay her because she didn't have a speaking part. But anyways, so in in CSI New York, during its second season, he joined as a recurring character, Dr. Sid Hammerback. What a name. He was the chief medical examiner and became a main character in season 5. Okay, so this is the guy who gets to on screen eat his lunch while they're playing with the dead body, basically.
Okay.
So in 2006, Joy appeared on screen in Alexander Aha's remake of The Hills Have Eyes, a very creepy film, where he portrays a mutant named Lizard. So, a person that's been deformed named Lizard. He also starred as Ted Bedworth, which was father of Samir Armstrong's character Nell Bedworth, in the 2006 romantic comedy It's a Boy-Girl Thing. And in 2007, Joy played the character of Colonel Stevens in Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. So, something of Ridley Scott's universe there. And he appeared as Dr. Stephen Hawking in the comedy film in 2008 superhero movie. So he's done some odd things and some interesting things. Now, Joy has had an ongoing stage engagement on Broadway and throughout the U.S., most recently appearing as Charles in King Charles III at Shakespeare Theatre Company in D.C. That was from February to March in 2017. So, telling the future a little. And as Crito and the poet Miletus in Socrates in the Public Theater in New York, which ran from April to June in 2019. So it sounds a little Shakespeare, if you will, some formal theater there. So, we have another rare opportunity here. The old lights haven't burned out yet, and the Uber hasn't arrived. So let's talk about this movie, Toppy. Did you see this in the theater?
No. I don't remember this at all. I think most places it came and went. I'm sure as a result of the resurgence in popularity of sci-fi things due to Star Wars, it's why this came to be. It was a book at first, and before it became a movie, it was one of those projects that was handed off and on, and for like 5 years before Anderson finally made it. It's low budget, but I gotta say, in spite of that fact, what you see on screen is pretty top-notch quality stuff. There's a lot of pyrotechnics, they're practical effects. This is long before CGI, and it's all rather convincing. I give you the major set pieces. There's nothing wrong with them. They look great. The portions of the movie where they're going through a field at night of a plane crash, it don't get better than that. It looks fantastic. So, in spite of their low budget, the people there had the know-how to make this stuff look really, really good. And that's all I got to say about that. The story, well, listen, it's a story about time travel. And when isn't a story about time travel confusing? Well, never. And this story, well, it starts out as a legit mystery. Christopherson has to figure out what happened to this plane and the passengers and why it went down. And it starts out as a true mystery, and we have very few answers as we start to watch, and I feel like it does a great job in drawing us into the mystery. We really want to know what the hell is going on, because not everything is as it seems. So I feel like it draws you in really nice. I think there's a problem eventually when we see a good 20 minutes of the movie through Christopherson's character, and then because of the time change, we see the exact same scenes for another 20 minutes. All over again, but this time it's from Cheryl Ladd's perspective. That's, not great choices. Not great choices. They could have done this and not literally repeated the scenes over. At any rate, there are problems like that. But it's got a rousing finish, and there's a lot in this movie that strikes true today, because a lot of the message of this movie is how the present world totally effed up the future with pollution, and the future is pretty terrible. And the time travelers are trying to fix things by going into the past to get basically sperm donors, to be honest. And it's not a pretty picture. And at the end, there's a slight bright spot, because we're given to believe that Christopherson and Cheryl Ladd are flung into the far future, which is a much better place. Maybe there's hope. So it ends with a note of hope. But on the whole, for a low-budget movie, ain't bad. Time travel, complicated, but not too bad. Not too bad.
I would of course say that this came out when I was just a little tyke, but I recall this actually might have been one of few films that my father actually rented. He went to the video store and rented. Because, I've said it once or twice, Dad was usually outdoors, and unless it was the colder time of year when he couldn't be outdoors, we didn't have those movie channels some people got later on in the 80s and 90s on cable. So that's saying something. The pretty lady that had been in Charlie's Angels was in this movie, so of course Dad was going to go to the video store and possibly expose the impressionable mind of his young son. And maybe he'd see the pretty lady in the movie and, you know, I would choose my path, but I just wanted hair like her.
Oh yeah.
But
She has a lot of different hairstyles in this movie because she jumps around in time. But yeah, there's like one scene of her in that when she's back in the future where she's got that total 90s rock and look with her.
Oh yeah, that updo that kind of reminds you of Tina Turner in Thunderdome. But the one thing that I'll say about many time travel films is that they actually lend themselves to rewatches because, of course, a time travel story is going to be about retracing your steps and maybe making decisions that affects an outcome. So after having watched it before, seeing it as an adult, it makes more sense now when Louise, who is Cheryl Ladd's character, is told that she needs to go back because, minor spoiler, they have these devices that render people unconscious. They call them just a stunner. It basically looks like what people have these days, like the electronic cigarettes, the vaping machines. You know, you hold it in the palm of your hand. But one of her crew dropped theirs on the aircraft because there was an armed person on board, a terrorist. So that person made a sacrifice and they dropped their device. Well, that's a big no-no because you can't leave evidence of the future. They will find it in present day. The whole idea is that they are essentially rescuing these people who would have otherwise been victims, people who would have died in a plane crash. And the reason they're doing this is because we're not going to look in places where people aren't going to be missed. They're expected to be dead. And to quote Cheryl Ladd's character Louise, we're very good at what we do because they are able to match people's dental records and fingerprints with their doubles and replace them with, basically the dead. So These people have a second chance at life because they've been, pardon the term, snatched from the moment where they would have died, and now they're put in the future where people from Louise's time have lost the ability to have their own children because of the terrible things we have done to the planet and to ourselves. And that's part of that hopeful message, is that they're being flung into the far future when everything goes wrong and everything's going to be self-destructed to eliminate basically a paradox is caused. They're sent into the far future to escape the explosion. And I was reading, Toppy, this is one of those things where when a film is released in countries throughout the world, sometimes there are different scenes available in other countries because maybe we aren't as strict about language or nudity. And apparently there's a alternate ending in some of the copies released overseas where Louise and Bill end up in sort of a Garden of Eden setting. And I haven't seen it, but I have to wonder if it might be au naturel.
Possibly. I want to say hats off to Chris Christopherson. I think he played a totally believable character. He's a man that has no life because he's given his all to his job, which is air safety. He hasn't had a relationship of any note for years. He's pretty miserable personally, but he's really good at his job and people respect him. And it's just about all he has. And so when Cheryl Ladd's character Louise comes to him, it becomes a moment for him to redeem his humanity and actually make a personal connection with this woman. And Chris Christopherson, if he can't play haggard and tired, he can't play nothing. No, I mean, he's super good at haggard and tired, and he does a great job in this. So I think he's the best thing in terms of acting about this movie. There's some interesting choices when they portray the future. Apparently, most people are a combination of cyborg. A lot of them have mechanical parts that have replaced their natural body parts. Some of them seem to be, much more full-on robotic. Although I think they're androids or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of interesting. There's no villains there. That's what's interesting.
I think humanity is kind of the villain because we've made all these poor choices that have made the future bleak. So we've done this to ourselves.
Yeah, and the people of the future, well, they're just basically trying to save their own asses, and they come across time travel, and of course they're aware of creating paradoxes, but they create them anyways, and that sends shockwaves through the future. We sort of see them as earthquakes, and eventually it's the end of them, because they have one too many paradoxes in a row, and it seems to look like the people that make it through the last deadly paradox is Chris Christopherson and Cheryl Ladd, as they're flung into a far future, where presumably they live their best lives after that. Maybe in a Garden of Eden. Who knows?
Yeah, not too much unlike Logan's Run. But, of course, it's by the same director, so why wouldn't it have a similar image?
Yeah, you know what? I think Logan's Run and Millennium have a lot of the same problems and a lot of the great things going for them.
Mm-hmm.
Logan's Run it made a lot of money, but it's not exactly the greatest movie ever made. And neither is Millennium. But they both have enough that I think they're worth watching.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was going to ask Choppy, and it's not a very a big moment on screen, but after having watched this movie a couple of times, you pick up on little things, because as I was saying, that's the beauty of a time travel story, is that you retrace your steps, literally, and, purposefully. But there's a moment in the film after that first 20 minutes where we start to learn more about the reality that Louise comes from. And she has a pet. She has an animal that we get to see for a brief moment. Do you remember that particular scene?
Good Lord, no.
Oh, it's very charming because in its own very brief moment, it gives you an idea of the bleakness of that future, because she has a bird that's in a cage and she goes to feed it, but it literally has an airlock for her to be able to provide it food with, so that it's sanitary before it reaches the bird inside. So I have to wonder if this is not a creature that she rescued from her own time, because it wouldn't exist there, that this is something that she got on one of her visits to the past, and she preserved it because it's the only specimen that she has of that hopeful time. So she even talks to it when she feeds it. She says, "Polly, want a chemical-free sterilized cracker?"
Oh, wow. What the hell? I must have blinked and missed it.
Oh, it is totally a blink moment, but yeah.
Yeah. Although, there's this weird stuff when Louise goes back in time and she's chain smoking in front of Chris Christopherson, who constantly says, "You smoke too much." And I didn't get it really until someone else talked about it on another show. And so apparently the reason her character was chain smoking in the past is that her body was used to pollution. And the only way she could exist in the past was to have an approximate same amount of pollution. And that's why she was smoking. Apparently she may not have done very well if she hadn't been, smoking. So it's not really explained, but that's apparently what that whole smoking bit was about.
Oh, well, I will only mention one other moment in the film, Toppy, because I found it to be the most hysterical physical comedy moment in the whole film. And that's the moment when Bill and Louise are out at the restaurant. And actually, it's one of those moments where he mentions that she's smoking too much, because of course she has to repeat that line, I'm going to quit, or this is my last one. Do you remember what happened in the restaurant when he talked to her about her smoking?
Well, she just tossed it.
Oh my God!
Cigarette.
She was so used
over a balcony or something.
Yes, in her future, they are so used to the people on their mission teams smoking that they have a system kind of like a fire system that puts things out, but just a laser. It detects a lit cigarette and it puts it out, like just zap. And so she's so used to that from her reality. She's out of place in her mind that she's in the past. She just throws a lit cigarette into the restaurant.
Yeah, so there's a lot of what's going on here moments that you don't really understand until later. And I have to say that the chemistry between Ladd and Christopherson is pretty good. And you kind of believe that they're falling in love, or something important is happening between the two of them. So I think that's, it's not great, but it's okay.
And the last thing I will say about the rewatching part is that it helps you to understand some scenes, because this is still the 80s. It's not the 90s yet. But when Cheryl Ladd's character first runs into Chris Christopherson's character, where they're having the meeting and they're reviewing the recording tape from the plane that crashed, she is just sort of nervous because she's been asked to serve coffee to the group. And now you're led to believe that this is just a woman who is, over the moon seeing this attractive guy, and she's just, doesn't know what to say. But that's not at all what happened. She, in fact, is terrified because she knows that she's seen this guy before, or thinks she's seen this guy before, and she's afraid of causing problems in her future. So, of course, giving away the scene, she ends up leaving in a rush, like somebody's avoiding an ex or something. It's just one of the things that makes this movie something that you should watch at least a couple of times, just to understand why the scenes are the way they are, because there's a reason she reacts to seeing him. She's not turned on by him. She's aghast because, oh no, what if he remembers me? Does he know who I am?
Yeah. The core of the movie is really a mystery. It's a mystery what happened to the plane. It's a mystery of this Louise lady. What's her deal? And when we see scenes of the future, of Louise in the future, it's again a mystery to us. Nothing is explained. We find things out later. They have the two parallel stories, one after another, from Christopherson's point of view and then from Ladd's point of view, and we're just sitting there going, what does this mean? It's a mystery. And I think they carry the mystery off pretty good, and it keeps you interested until you find out. And so in that way, it totally works as a mystery.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we are at the point of the show where we talk about something else you might enjoy if you liked Millennium. Now, just so that you're aware, this is available to see in many places. I, in fact, had my own copy because this is a film that I enjoy this so much. I think you actually mentioned, Toppy, that you had one as well, or am I? No, actually, that was the last movie. But I think it's available in certain public forums.
Yeah, I saw it on YouTube. There you go. I said it. There you go. YouTube.
Okay, so
it's free.
Yes, for now. Find it while it lasts. Anyways, our snack tray, something else you might enjoy. So, I think that if you enjoy films about dystopian futures like Millennium, you might enjoy a TV miniseries that's based upon a Stephen King novel. This is a miniseries from 1995, so it's about 6 years into the future from Millennium. It's a horror, mystery, sci-fi tale, The Langoliers, and it stars Dean Stockwell, who Chris Christopherson has co-starred with, and everybody's favorite immigrant, Mr. Bronson Pinchot. And the story is most of the passengers on an airplane disappear, and the remainder land the plane in a mysteriously barren airport. Now, I will say this. It's a rare thing when somebody can play a bad character, and I mean bad as a villain, and you love to hate them. Bronson Pinchot may not be an Academy Award winner, but I love to hate the character he plays in this movie. He's one of those OCD people, and his tick is he likes the sound of tearing paper.
Okay.
And he gets his just desserts in the end, folks, because someone just has had enough of him.
Okay. I know I saw part of it, and it was quite intriguing. So that's a great recommendation. I'm going to recommend another time travel story. I think this one's a little bit easier to understand and frankly, much better done, and a much better story that was told. And it's a 1980 movie. It's an American science fiction war film about a modern nuclear-powered aircraft carrier that travels through time to the day before December 7th, 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor. It was directed by Don Taylor, and it stars Kirk Douglas, Martin Sheen, James Ferrantino, Catherine Ross, and Charles Durning. Oh. And it's a doozy. I bet you it had a similar budget, probably more of a budget than Millennium, but maybe not all that much more. But the time travel, as the story is told, comes out a little better, not so complicated, and I would say it has a satisfying ending. So if you liked all the time travel business of Millennium, you're going to like the final countdown, and that's what I'd recommend for you.
Oh, and Charles Durning, he was everybody's favorite dad from Jodie Foster's movie Home for the Holidays.
Yeah.
Among many others, of course. Alrighty. So, Toppy, we are out here at the lobby because it's almost time for Gertie to catch her ride. And we're going to tell folks about what we're going to discuss next time, which will be on Friday, July 21st. So if you will, go ahead and grab that bag of coins there, and we'll figure out what's coming up next.
Here you go.
Oh, alrighty. Go ahead and open that capsule, sir.
Alrighty. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Next time, folks, on Matinee Minutia. It's a mid-'80s action drama comedy. Phew. It's directed by the writer, not the director. It's directed by the writer of American Graffiti and Indiana Jones: The Temple of Doom. It stars the mom from Back to the Future. That's the Leo Thompson. And the future star of Helen Hunt's first movie, Tim Robbins. You're not going to believe what we're going to do next, folks. It's about a sarcastic humanoid duck that's pulled from his homeworld to Earth, where he must stop an alien invasion with the help of a nerdy scientist and a struggling female rock singer. If you don't know what I'm talking about, next time we're going to do Howard the Duck. There you go. Howard the Duck.
Wow, that's got Leah Thompson in it, you were saying, and that's the lady who is the mom in the Back to the Future movie, you were saying. Wow.
There you go.
Okay.
Don't miss it, kid.
Friday, July 21st. Now, what's special about this time of year, Toppy? You just said it, we're in the final countdown. There's just a couple of episodes left, so we take our usual summer break. And, we catch our breaths and we come back after the kiddos are back in school. So, catch the countdown. And, as usual, forthcoming or, a little warning in advance. Well, I shouldn't say warning, but advance notice, folks. We also have our annual season review on a forthcoming episode of The Shy Life with Mr. Paul Chandler. So stay tuned for that, if you will. All right, sir, if you would, say goodnight in the ways of the old days of radio.
I shall, but let me just thank the chat room, because we do this live, folks, and some folks have turned out to participate in our chat room, and that would be your hubby, Billy Starsage. Thank you to Lamont Cranston from New York City. And thank you to our pal Tommy Hash Browns. Thank you all for being here live in the chat room. And as far as signing off, well, good night, Gracie.
Thank you for listening to Matinee Minutia.
Our show streams live on the first and third Friday of the month.
Go to matineeminutia.com, click the YouTube icon for live video, enter Discord or chat.
You can find our show anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Visit our webpage at matineeminutia.com.
Tweet us on Twitter at Matinee Minutia.
Find our group on Facebook.
Have an idea for a show? Or why not let us know how we're doing?
Email us at matineeminutia@gmail.com.